So learning objectives. What we're going to talk about is what a vCISO is and is not. We're going to talk about a core mission of a vCISO, a 5-phase cyber program approach to building out a cyber program. We'll touch on risk and compliance management. We'll delve into data and privacy management, governance, and then measuring success. So what is a vCISO? Firstly, when we look at skills and attributes, it is an individual that is experienced, skilled, and certified. They're seasoned cybersecurity executives providing leadership strategy and governance without the cost of a full-time chief information security officer. You'll also see fractional vCISO, fractional CISO. The end is getting the benefits of a CISO with not carrying that full-time equivalent burden. CISO partners with your leadership to align your cyber strategy with business objectives, and including your risk appetite, develops governance frameworks, risk management and compliance strategies, interacts with auditors, regulators, your customers to demonstrate assurance and trust, and acts as a strategist and coach, ensuring organizational remains secure, compliant, and resilient. What a vCISO is not a help desk or an IT administrator performing technical operations. It's not a one-time snapshot in time only assessment or a report. Certainly not a replacement for managed security service providers. That would be a third-party company performing your cybersecurity role or your internal SOC team. Not a check-the-box compliance resource. And the vCISO governs, leads, and aligns. What drives the need for a CISO, vCISO, fractional CISO? Organization will lack internal security leadership or governance maturity. Have no idea what those maturity levels are. Compliance, big driver, whether it is industry best practices, regulatory security frameworks. We've got a handful of them here. They do require executive oversight. Cyber risk exposure and insurer requirements are increasing faster than internal capacity. Governance, boards, auditors, and regulators demand accountability and assurance. The business needs a strategic, measurable, and a sustainable, maintainable cybersecurity program. So let's talk about the cybersecurity function. 3 core pillars here. And when we look at cybersecurity in general, we never want the security tail wagging the dog. What I mean by that is we want to enable the business. Security will actually accelerate operations, and it should clear paths and not create roadblocks. We need to protect. We need to safeguard systems, data, information, and reputation from misuse, disclosure, and disruption. We need to promote. Empower everyone to strengthen security posture through awareness, training, and action. Let's delve a little bit further into each one of these in the next slide here. So if we look to the left, enable, we look at enable, we're really building confidence and agility. We want to embed security by design into the process and product cycle. What does security by design means? It's not an afterthought. The security considerations are put in at the onset of any process, new application, new procedure that would require security or risk oversight. We want to make sure there's assurances. We want to make sure that we enable the business to move faster by integrating security in a decision-making early. I'm being redundant there because I want to make sure that that is an important takeaway. Use controls and policies to accelerate approvals, reduce audit friction, and strengthen your customer trust. Now we get into the protection layer. This is where we get into the weeds. This is where all of your operational procedures and your cyber ops protection. Strengthen the resilience and reliability. First and foremost, we always want to make sure we understand the identity. So we want to have an identity-first security. MFA is multi-factor authentication. Least privilege, continuous authentication, those are conditional access policies. So whether you're using Entra for identities, you're in a Microsoft 365 tenant, conditional access policies. We want to maintain secure configurations across your attack surface, which are your cloud resources, your endpoints, your PCs, and your SaaS systems. SaaS is software as a service, basically using a web browser. Salesforce would be a great example, Monday.com, UKG, those are examples of SaaS-based systems. We want to make sure that we conduct ongoing resiliency testing. That's done through a good vulnerability management program, continual red and blue team exercises, walking through different risk scenarios and how well the organization responds. We want to make sure data that needs to be backed up is being validated. We have confirmation of those procedures. And then we want to continuously assess risk and gaps, making sure things are aligned, any changes in regulatory, anything changing in the threat environment, as we've discovered. Always going to be ongoing new threats. It's always just staying on top, being educated and informed on those threats and what those threats mean to your environment. And a lot of this, certainly from post-COVID, really building redundancy and recovery capabilities. Lesson learned, a lot of organizations, infrastructure was set up where lack of access or not even having the capabilities to safely work remote or in a hybrid environment. So building in those capabilities and keeping the organization operating under those type of stressors. Lastly, in this area, promote. We want to empower a culture and accountability, foster a culture of shared responsibility through role-based training, clear accountability. Make policies simple, not missing the point, but where it's in plain language, it's relatable for every employee, that they understand expectations and action items. Build a leadership cadence, consistent reporting, briefings, recognize good security behaviors. And then most importantly, or lastly, or I should not most importantly, your communication and awareness campaigns, making sure that there's ongoing security awareness training, there's ability to communicate, and incentives to reinforce that security is everyone's job. If we're going to put security by design as at the beginning, in the early decision making, we want to carry that mentality through of a security minded organization. And that really is a bottoms up, top down approach. It really needs the C-level, the managers to lead by example, making sure that everyone in the organization is aware and has a situational awareness with respect to cyber. So how do you put a cyber program together? We can simplify it into 5 phases. So you have assess, design, build, operate, we assure, and we optimize. And this is a cyclical process. So changes in your business, whether you bring on a new program, you're expanding, you're bringing on new service lines, changes in the regulatory frameworks, new threats. This is why this is a cyclical process. It's not we just set it and forget it. We have to continually go through these 5 phases. So let's drill down on each phase here. So assess. So we want a security framework baseline. We would typically suggest NIST CSF 2.0. Need to look at the risk register. IS, information security risk, is enterprise risk to the organization. And typically the risk register risk feed into your overarching ERM, your enterprise risk management. We want to make sure threat and the business impact profile are understood. Then we get into the design phase, putting the frameworks in place, governance, policy standards, SOP, standard operating procedures, putting in the baseline controls, and then building a roadmap. Build, we get into phase 3 for the build. We really are prioritizing the controls, making sure that we have our playbooks in place and training. Now we're ready to operate. Metrics, we got to have a cadence, evidence library, vendor due diligence, and exceptions. I'm going to stop really quick here for vendor due diligence. Third-party risk and the risk of the third party, which is fourth-party risk, is in focus. When we look at recent incidents over the past 6 months, a lot of it is attributed to third-party risk. So the importance of doing third-party vendor due diligence is critical, especially if they have access to any of your sensitive data or if they have elevated credentials into your environment. And then lastly, again, the cyclical, we want to assure and optimize. We need to have reviews, your tabletop exercises, which would simulate different risk scenarios or incident or disaster scenarios, seeing how well management reacts, and then lessons learned, and we just continue to refine your incident response. Make sure you're ready for audits. Make sure you have budgets and targets, and then we have clean reporting. And then lastly, your vCISO or your CISO, somebody needs to be designated as your leader of your cyber program. Risk and compliance. So risk register and treatments, exception waiver, logging and review. So as I aforementioned on the prior slide, when we have a good cyber program, we're able to have visibility to IS or cyber related risks, and they hit a register, and that register then has prioritization of what items do we tackle first. Well, we certainly look at things that are most critical or severe, that can be exploitable in your environment, and we put a plan of action in place for that. But you're going to find that you may be in a transition period where you're moving from running on-prem applications and you're considering a move to the cloud. And you've got an old antiquated application. Maybe it can't be part of the automated patch cycle. So that system would be identified, and that would be an exception because it would not be following the normal risk register and treatments of such risk. So, and then we want to make sure that it's not wrong or bad to have something in the exception log, but it needs to be reviewed because eventually we want to have as few exceptions that move away from the normal treatment. And again, I spent a little bit of time on the prior slide, third-party vendor. So when we look at evaluating third-party vendor, you know, three things that really need to come into focus. Impact and security assessments. You want to make sure your vendors have equal or better security than you do. You want to also understand what their internal incident response plans are, what their escalation procedures are. And then lastly, if you have contracts or agreements, making sure that you have the right language in your security and privacy clauses. Audit readiness, making sure that there's an evidence library and that we have internal reviews. From a traditional CISO workload, the workload doesn't go away, it's ever increasing, but there has been some advances in technology over the past few years that makes risk and general governance, risk and compliance a little easier to corral. And these are AI generated GRC platforms. So now there are platforms out there that can hem and pull all of these different components and making some of the traditional mundane tasks or items that could typically fall through the cracks. Everything now gets put into a singular platform so that you have visibility to all the work product, whether it's your auditor, regulator, manager. So having a profound change on the way certainly vCISOs operate if they leverage that technology. So a good GRC platform can really be a CISO vCISO's best friend. Data protection and privacy programs. At the end of the day, what are we really doing when we're talking about CISO? Talking about understanding where our sensitive information is, being able to protect it. So one of the things that out of the gate, classification and handling. So firstly is, are you labeling sensitivity labels on documents or files? Are you doing it for emails? We want to make sure that the inventory or the understanding of where that sensitive data is, MPNI, PII, PHI, because at some point in time, cyber operations, the cost is going to continue to be an inflationary discussion. So when you go to spend money or you're looking to put a cyber program together to protect sensitive data, it makes best sense to know what you have and where it's at, where it is at rest, what it's doing in transit. Is that data encrypted? Should it be encrypted? Identity first certainly helps with the MFA, least privilege access reviews. There is a strategy that CISOs and organizations are taking. It's called zero trust architecture. It's not necessarily a technology, it's a strategy that leverages identities, it uses telemetric data, it uses behavioral that will help with this identity first, this least privilege and access reviews. Secure configuration and monitoring. This is a miss by a lot of organizations, not making the investment in logging, whether it's SIMSOC logging. But at the end of the day, if something does go wrong, we have to do a root cause, and we look towards logs. There's several types of different logs. So the logs is going to show any egress or ingress into the environment. It's going to give us an idea of who's in there and how they got in. So if there's no logging that we can access and no alerting, we lose that very important piece. We want to be resilient. RTO, RPO, we've got an acronym salad here. That simply means RTO means return to operation. Question you ask yourself is, how long can I be without this application before it becomes a big issue for us delivering our business goals and objectives? Is it 15 minutes? Is it 2 hours? Is it 48 hours? And an RPO is how much data can you lose before you return to operations? So is it a 2 hour? Is it a day's worth of data? And that's what drives your backup snapshot. So if you need to have no more than 2 hours loss of data, then you're doing a snapshot or backup every 2 hours. DR is your disaster recovery. BC is your business continuity plan, which also has a component for business impact analysis. And an incident exercises. If we look to the right, there's a lot here. So one of the best practices is having a committee. I apologize, I got 4-4 here twice. But the point here, there needs to be a governing body, cross-functional. There needs to be that oversight for data governance. Governance and culture. Again, we talked about keep in front of mind situational awareness, training, phishing simulation exercises, seeing how staff either clicks or doesn't click, and getting that information. So, having quarterly board updates, letting the board know or senior management know where we are, showing what those monthly metrics are. Connecting weekly with the ops, cyber ops, IT ops, making sure that things are aligned and issues are addressed. Decision rights, RACI, would change guardrails. So a lot of the procedures, policies always should have your RACI. RACI is who's responsible, who would be accountable, who would be consented, or who would be informed of a particular action or a policy. So if I'm the vulnerability program manager, I am responsible for delivering on the reports, the objectives, tasks that have been outlined in my vulnerability management program. My manager would be accountable for that. And you want to make sure that the board or senior management is informed on anything with respect to cyber. Role-based training. And again, I'm harping on the frequent awareness moments, just making staff aware of what's out there, kind of the do's and don'ts with use an email, or, think before you click, or think before you send, think before you share something. What's my audience? Is this protected information? So again, and that's a continual effort. That's just something that you want to have in perpetuity. So in the end, you want to operate compliant, and you want to educate and train staff. This is what we want to get out of a governance and culture mindset. And all the work we do is nothing if we can't measure the performance. So it's all great to see nice things in Word templates and exhibits and addendums, but when the rubber meets the road, proof is in the pudding. Show me the metrics. How are we performing? We want to make sure we understand where our control health is. Do we have all of our MFA multi-factor? Are we making sure we have our EDR tools in place? Patching. What are our patching SLAs? Windows environment, Windows users require a significant amount of patching and updates, different than a Mac or Linux-based. Backup success. Are we having successful backups? Hardening compliance. Well, hardening is really more making sure that the underlying configuration of the operating system meets certain benchmarks. And we typically look towards the Center for Internet Security. They're in the Albany region. They are funded by the Department of Homeland Security. They provide a comprehensive list of benchmarks across multiple different operating platforms. In fact, we scan using CIS benchmarks to look at the health of clients' M365 tenants or their Google Workspace to see if their configurations and settings are pass or fail. Risk, We want to performance and measuring risk. What are our top risk trends? Making sure we're looking at the exception aging, critical vendor coverage. We want to make sure detection and response, mean time to detect, mean time to repair or recover from such of an event or an incident. Tabletop closure rate. And then we want to have something for assurance. You know, where are we with our maturity for SOC 2, or where are we with maturity with NIST, CSF 2.0? Where are we with maturity with HIPAA, with New York State DFS 23, GBLA? What does that evidence look like? Are there any items that need to be remediated? So the performance and measurement is a very important capstone on all the efforts in building out the 5-phase, 5-approach cyber program. Got a quick glossary here for just some, again, the acronym word salad here. CSF, Cybersecurity Frameworks, NIST, KPIs, KRIs, those are your indicators. So we look at performance as well as risk. I talked about GRC, it's just starting to see that more and more in the marketplace. That really stands for governance, risk, and compliance. And these platforms are really have been contemporized and are riddled with Gen AI, which again, pairing up a good GRC platform kind of brings in different functional roles into a single pane of glass. So compliance can work in there. You can have cyber work in there. Definitely makes managing the work easier and visibility and reporting to management clearer. Continuity plan, disaster, and then lastly, CIS controls. Those are your best practices for system hardening and management. So if you're rolling out Windows 2022 for new domain controllers, or you're looking at, you know, Windows 11 Enterprise, you should look and make your system builds, or your golden image should be built around a CIS benchmark. And that's it. Stop sharing. Do you have any questions here? So that concludes what is a vCISO. Hopefully you have some good takeaways here. If you have any follow-up questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.